What's up, guys? This is Brave, and I'm back with another review of Tylerperry Sistas. This is season 3, episode 2. The episode is titled Acting Normal. And let's just go ahead and get to it, because we first start off with, of course, Andy going to see how Gary is doing. Baby boy is sitting up like nothing done happened because he switched the bullets. And when Jasmine shot him, she only shot him with rubber bullets, right? But here's the thing. When Andy was doing all that screaming and all that hollering she was doing, she made it seem like she saw Gary in a puddle of blood. Am I tripping? Because I could have swore she acted like she saw that man in a puddle of blood. You mean to tell me after she knocked Jasmine out, when she ran over to Gary and didn't see any blood or anything there, what was she thinking? That like Jasmine missed or what? And also, the fact that Gary just automatically knew to switch to rubber bullets because he felt like Jasmine was going to either kill him or herself, I find that to be very interesting. And then I have to question the police officers, because you mean to tell me he was sitting in the back this whole time and y'all could have just told her like, oh yeah, he's sitting in the back, it was some rubber bullets, but he okay. Y'all could have just said that. Instead of having her hooping and hollering, I need to know if Gary's okay. He needs to be in the hospital. Blah, 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 blah. Like, come on. So, let me go ahead and move on to the rest of this conversation that Gary and Andy had, because he's talking about well, I need to go pick up my son because my son is at Jasmine's mom's house. So, I'm going to pick him up, bring him to my mama's house, and then I'm just going to go stay over there. I said, now, Gary, this is the first time that you have mentioned your child in I don't know how long, because I believe his son is autistic, or I don't know if he has multiple children. I can't remember because that was like season 1. But I'm like, now you want to be worried about the well-being of this child? Also, how do you even know if that's where this kid is? Because if Jasmine just pulled up on you to kill you, how do you know if that's where your child is at? Just curious. Also, and what's wrong with this child being at his grandmother's house? Like, what's going to be the difference in the child being with his grandmother or his mom's side versus your side of the family? Because at the end of the day, I mean, Jasmine about to be in jail or whatever, and then you have Andy talking about, so, well, I hope she gonna be in jail for a very long time. And I'm just like, but girl, you just put like the mother of his kids in jail. Okay, like, and you're happy about that? Are you ready to be a stepmom, Andy? Let's ask that question. Alright, let's just go ahead and move on over to Karen. It's the top of the morning. Baby girl is coming into her living room. And, of course, we have Aaron there. And, you know, he has to apologize for what happened the night before with him begging and pleading for Karen to sleep with him. First of all, what I'm about to say doesn't even have anything to do with this topic between Karen and Aaron. But why didn't I ever realize how ugly her couch is? What is that? It got trees and leaves and all type of crap on that couch. Absolutely not. And also, I guess I haven't noticed it because I don't know why. I know a lot of y'all called me out in the comments because last week I didn't recognize that Danny had a bathtub. My bad, y'all. I forgot all those scenes. All I knew was that her and Preston was looking real snug up in there, okay? It was looking real tight. So, now that I'm looking at each lady's apartment, I'm sorry, but now that I'm looking at Karen's, I'm just like, what is this ugly couch? But let's go ahead and move on, because now they're talking about, you know, why he did all this. Because she's like, you know, I have a feeling why. I know that you decided to strip down and beg for, you know, Karen to sleep with him, because we already know he really has deep feelings for Karen. But also at the same time, it's like, baby boy, you are an alcoholic. Like, we need to get you an AA right now, right this instant, because yeah, I'm so upset that his character gave up his little bit of sobriety for Karen. But let me just go ahead back to the topic on hand, because Aaron basically says that, his whole reasoning for coming by to Karen's place was so that he can have sex with her, and that way she can forget, just forget about Zach, period. Especially when he's inside of her. I said, oh, you're very honest. So the thing about this conversation, though, is that Karen, she's like, well, Zach, he's in my heart. He's not, just in her head. He's in her heart. And I'm just like, girl, he just showed up to your house the day before and told you that y'all were just effing. That was it. That was all. It doesn't seem like Zach really wants anything to do with you. I know what he told Fatima, how, he still, has some type of feelings for Karen. But I don't feel like it's in that way. So, Karen, just go ahead and let this go. So, after she says that, she's like, well, I have to go to work. And she's like, can we talk about this later? He's like, probably not. And I completely understand Aaron, because it's like, how many times are we going to talk about this? Like, literally, how many times have we seen Karen and Aaron talk about Zach at this point? Like, girl, just leave Zach alone, or completely leave Aaron alone. Like, at some point, you have to let one of them go free, or maybe both. So when Aaron is walking out, he's basically like, you know what, I need some time. And actually, you need some time as well, because you just need to clear your head. And I do agree, because if we can recall, just want to throw this out here, because y'all know we have been dealing with the same day for like 4 or 5 episodes. So, literally, this is the next day after Karen has hooked up with Zach. Yeah, y'all both need to go ahead and separate. She needs to clear her mind for sure. And Aaron, you need to figure out if this is really who you want to be with. Because considering this is less than 24 hours that she has slept with Zach. Like, y'all should even been in the same room. Like, Aaron, when you left her shop, that should have been the end. Like, we shouldn't have seen Aaron until like episode 10 of season 3. I'm just saying. But let's go ahead and move on. So we get to Danny and Preston. They are at her house, her apartment. And basically, he's telling her that he's going to go see his mom. And she's like, well, what about the rest of your family? He's like, no, my mom is cool. She's pissed off at my brothers. Like, don't even worry about it. So then when he asks her, like, oh, well, what else do you have planned today? She's like, no, I'm just going to go to work and come home. And then she's like, well, why are you asking me that? He's like, because I'm probably going to miss you, or something like that. And she's like, okay, well, don't be having your little hillbillies in this house. And I'm like, oh, not calling the family hillbillies, even though that's exactly what they are. Next thing you know, there's a knock at the door, right? Now, y'all, this part right here pissed me off. So, first of all, Danny thinks that it's her landlord, but Preston is like, no, I already paid the rent. It ain't gonna be your landlord. Danny goes to hide behind a clothing rack. I said, girl, who do you think is at this door? If anything, it may be Zach. But no, it's Sabrina. Now, the part that pissed me off is that she just kind of stood there as if she, number one, didn't know that Preston moved in. Secondly, acted like she didn't know that Preston will probably be there because he is Danny's man. And girl, you were just on the phone with Danny last night. Did you not think that maybe her man would be there? Like, come on. Oh, but I forgot, because Danny isn't allowed to have a man in the same capacity as everybody else does. Also, y'all, what does Sabrina have on? I don't understand what is happening with her style this, I guess, last season and this season, because this dress ain't the move. Too much is going on. But anyways, so she comes over so that way she can ask Danny for some advice. And Danny's like, listen, I don't want to give you no advice on Jacoby and whatever else you got going on. But Sabrina is like, well, it's only about what am I supposed to do when I go to work, because, it's kind of awkward now because me and Jacoby, we kind of did some things, but they kind of not. So then she has to explain that, they kind of stopped or whatever. And, once Danny finds out that, Jacoby, he has a monster on him, she's like, oh, well, maybe I need to stop at the bank. I'm like, girl, you already have Preston, chill out. But anyways, she basically tells Sabrina, like, girl, you just need to go in there, act as normal as you possibly can. And I'm like, girl, you went all the way to her house for that? Girl, you should have just went on ahead and used your own advice, because I'm pretty sure you would have told yourself, just go in there and play it cool. But for some reason, you have Sabrina practicing how she gonna say hello. I said, girl, get out of Danny's house with this. Danny is over. She's like, listen, just don't say nothing to the man. Just go into your office, close the door, and let that be that. Here we go, though, because didn't Calvin just tell you last night, Sabrina, that you sit up here and you listen to other people and you just take whatever they say and you run with it? We gonna get there. So we move on over to Andy. Baby girl got a whole new hairstyle. The same twist. They're just cut up and like chopped up in the back. So I guess it's supposed to give like that short in the back, longer in the front look. I'm not really sure if I like it. But anyways, Gary comes in. He got some man with a moto jacket on with him. And she's like, okay, who is this? And he's like, oh, this is my friend. I told him, how beautiful you are. The guy's giving Andy compliments. And basically, this guy, his model dropped out of whatever he was doing. And Gary suggested that Andy be the person to do it. So I'm just like, so now you're a talent agent. Is that what's happening, Gary? Like, what made you decide that Andy needs to model anything, considering you're the same guy who whines about if any guy even looks at Andy? Make it make sense. Now, first of all, one thing that I thought was kind of weird about this scene is that considering Andy is like a lawyer or whatever, she never asked like, what kind of modeling is this? What will I possibly be advertising? Because the guy said he wants to make sure that the client is happy. And I'm just like, girl, you don't even know what you're supposed to be modeling. You should have asked some questions. But once oh boy leaves, because, she's already agreed to this, she's like, oh my gosh, Gary, do you really think I can do it? And I'm just like, girl, you need to be asking him where his child is, since that's where he ran out last night to go do. He went to go pick up his child, supposedly. But she ends up asking him, well, how are you feeling? And he's like, I'm sore or whatever. And she's like, well, I can run you a salt bath. And I'm like, girl, shouldn't you be about to go to work? Come on now, Andy. I see your outfit. I know you about to go into work. But he's like, no, I'm good. I'm about to go to work. Now, y'all, I think we all watched the same show, right? What job Gary got? Because wasn't Gary embezzling money from his job? Y'all, please let me know in the comments if I have this wrong or not. But I could have swore like he was doing something corrupt at his job. Or maybe that was a part of the plot that Jasmine cooked up. I can't even remember. Honestly, I feel like I need to go back and watch this show from season 1, because we still are going day by day. But, I feel like because of the way this show is shot, I'm getting confused, and that's a problem. Because, like, when Gary went to jail, right, I feel like he went to jail for, like, a cool minute, so he probably would have lost his job anyways because he was in jail. Of course, he probably would have got replaced by now. But, on Tylerperry's timeline, he may not have. Like, I don't even know at this point. But anyways, moving forward. So, Andy wants to meet Gary's child, right? Which makes sense at this point because they're engaged, remember? And he's like, with his autism, I don't think that's right about now. Him meeting new people, his mom's away. I said, Gary, you are so full of crap. The fact that y'all mamas is probably raising his kid, which actually, hold on. I just realized something. Didn't Jasmine take his mom's ashes and try to throw them over the building or the parking lot? No, she tried to put them in the gas tank or whatever, right? Or was it his grandmother? No, I think it was his mama's ashes. Hold on, Tyler. What is happening with the writing? I need somebody to let me know in the comments if that was Jasmine emptying out the ashes of his mom, or was it his grandmother? Because that changes the whole scenario. But I just feel like Gary is up to his old tricks, because when he asked her, oh, did you tell your girls about what happened last night? She's like, no, I'm just going to start keeping things to myself and all this stuff. I'm just like, girl, Jasmine put a gun in your head. She broke into your house and your man got shot with rubber bullets. I'm very surprised that you didn't tell your girls that. I mean, if you finally wanted to tell your girls an interesting story, this one, it probably would have been the one to tell. So Gary ends up letting Andy know that he has a surprise for her after her photo shoot. He won't tell her what it is. We'll just have to wait and see. One more thing that I actually noticed within this scene was that Andy was supposed to get her locks changed, right? As in the door locks, not her damn hairstyle. I don't understand how we confused the two, because she needed new locks on her doors, not that new haircut that she got. Now let's go ahead and move on to this unnecessary scene with Maurice. So he's at the bank, and old boy, who was a meth addict, he came in or whatever, he trying to cash a check or whatever. It's talking about some $5,000, right? So he's like, oh, well, where'd you get this check from or whatever? He's like, oh, I work for this person, it's for my job, whatever, and he's like, oh, it's actually from Calvin, right? So basically, old boy stole Calvin's checkbook, and I'm like, Calvin, you didn't notice that your things were missing? That's weird, because if anything, after Maurice's friend slept in your room, you did not think to inspect your entire room in that house? Because I know I would have. Because if anything was missing, me and Maurice, we would have had some serious problems. So Maurice is like, oh, so yeah, what do y'all do together? He's like, oh, we build houses. And I can't even remember what Calvin's job was, so who knows if that was true or not. But Maurice is like, oh, so describe him. Like, what does he look like, the guy who gave you the check? He's like, oh, he's dark-skinned, he's this, that, and other. We already know that is not what Calvin is at all. So Maurice is like, you're going to jail. So he ends up pressing the button to lock the doors for the bank, right? Okay, cool. He's trying to call the police or whatever, and an old dude is over here begging for him not to go to jail. I'm just like, dude, you stole someone's checkbook. You're going to jail. And then you tried to bring the damn check into the bank too. You really going to jail. Now, I don't understand how Maurice was able to lock the doors from the inside and Jacoby was still able to open them from the outside. So baby boy was able to run out the door. I said, you know what? Waste of a scene. So after that, Maurice is upset. He's like, you let this man out or whatever. And Jacoby's like, listen, I'm just trying to come into work. So we already know he's wondering if Sabrina is there. And Maurice goes on and on about how, he knows what happened between them, how Sabrina doesn't want to see Jacoby and all this stuff. And I'm just like, wait, did Sabrina call Maurice at some point during the middle of the night to give him the tea on how she don't really want to deal with Jacoby anymore? Because that's exactly how she was feeling. I just don't remember her expressing that to Maurice. So Sabrina comes in. First of all, she kind of stops when she comes through the door because she sees Jacoby and she sees Maurice. So she speaks to Maurice, and then she walks directly into her office and ignores Jacoby. So she basically listened to Danny's advice when she was like, just go into your office, ignore him, right? Here's my thing. Didn't Calvin just tell your ass that you sit up here, you listen to other people, and you let them dictate your life? Sabrina, you're still not getting it. You're still doing it. So let's just go ahead and move on, because now we see Zach and Danny, they are at work, and someone tipped Zach, and what does Danny do? Take the money right out of his hand. And he's like, you know what, I ain't even tripping because, I got some money right now. And she's like, how do you have money? And he's like, one of the properties that I was working on is sold. And she's like, hold up, you just got into this business. He's like, yeah, well, the property sold or whatever. She's like, well, you should be breaking Karen off some money. I said, oh, Danny, why do you care so much about Karen getting some money when Karen surely would not do the same for you? But whatever, girl. And he's like, listen, I did give Karen some money. I gave her $5,000. And, Danny was definitely shocked by that. But he's like, I'm going to keep giving her money until she feels like we are even. I'm like, Zach, I feel like you need to stop giving her money because you're still keeping that contact with Karen. And y'all need to shut off communication. So, of course, Danny wants to know what's going on with him and Fatima. And she's like, well, do you love her? And he's like, no, we just met. I don't, love her or whatever. And she's like, okay, so you really like her? He's like, yeah, you can say that. And she's like, so why were you messing around with Karen? And he's like, that's just kind of what me and Karen do. So, Danny continues to have it in her mind that him and Karen are going to be together. And he's like, no, I'm trying to move on. And hopefully she will move on. Now, what got me in this scene was the fact that Zach sat up there talking about talking about old stuff, because, she's mentioning him hooking up with Karen, and she's like, that happened the other day. I said, other day? What is other? That happened yesterday. The timeline for this show is out of control. Do they think that we think that a couple of days have gone by? Because it hasn't. Because we started this episode off where we left off last night. I mean, not last night, but last week. With Gary and Andy and all that hoopla happening. But I digress. So, we move on to Karen's shop. So Karen gets there. Pam wants to know what happened between Aaron and Zach. Because like I said, this all happened last night. That, Karen hooked up with Zach and all that stuff. And she's like, I'm not telling you my business. Go stock some shelves or something. So next thing you know, Andy ends up walking in. And what's so funny to me is that, first of all, I don't understand what time of morning this is, because somebody should be at work at this point. AKA, Andy, you're a lawyer. Why aren't you at work by now? Secondly, the fact that she went and got her hair done by somebody else that's not Karen is very interesting, because I don't see her going to anybody else besides her best friend who has a salon to do her hair. And also, girl, who goes to get their hair done that early in the morning? What? I don't understand. Again, you were supposed to change the locks on the door, not the locks on your head. So besides that, we have Karen and Andy, saying good morning to each other and acting as if days have gone by since they've talked to each other. It is a very awkward scene to me, especially when you have Karen saying, oh, I was calling you or whatever. And Andy is like, oh yeah, I got your messages. I figured I would come see you in person. She said that as if she was about to break down what went down last night as to why she wasn't answering Karen's calls. I can't. Because then this leads to Karen being like, well, did you know? And she's like, I promise I didn't know anything. And I'm just like, how many times is Karen going to ask about this? This girl done told you at least 3-4 times now that she didn't know nothing. Let it go. And then also, the fact that Andy's like, all right, well, I'm going to go. Well, actually, before that, she's like, Fatima is a good woman. And I'm like, we've already established that as well. So I feel like we just keep having the same conversations over and over again. But Andy is like, all right, well, I'm going to head into to work. I just wanted to, see you. And I'm just like, so you came over here for nothing. You just said, oh, I wanted to see you in person, as if you were going to tell her, girl, last night Jasmine broke into my house. But no, that's not what you did. You came by just to look at Karen and then leave. What was the purpose? So we have Karen wanting to get drinks later, and Andy's like, well, actually, craziest thing happened. Gary ended up bringing over one of his friends who happened to be a photographer, and he wants me to model. So I don't understand why Karen kind of caught a little attitude at this point, because she was like, your house at your house? And I'm just like, why are you questioning that? As if Gary and Andy like moved into another house or something. Like, that was very strange. And then also when Andy had to be like, oh yeah, it's legit because she said the guy's name. I can't even remember what it was. And she's like, oh yeah, he's legit. He's a good photographer. And I'm just like, Karen, what is happening? Actually, not even just Karen. This entire scene is awkward unnecessarily, because we never left off on an awkward moment between Karen and Andy. Now let's go ahead and move on to another scene that pissed me off completely, and that was Andy storming through the building. And when Fatima is like, oh, good morning, Miss Barnes, do you need anything? She's just like, yeah, we need to talk. And like when they get into her office, she's like, close the door, with this funky, jacked up attitude. Like, this right here, oh my gosh, it's one of the reasons why I really don't like Andy, because Andy has a jacked up attitude, and she used to really have it bad in season 1. And I always felt, was that season 1 or season 2? Yeah, I think that was season 1 when we first met Fatima, because I used to always feel like she treated Fatima bad, like the way she used to talk to her. And now I'm just like, you gotta hold up, because Fatima is not in the wrong in this situation. Fatima is not the one who's making it awkward between you and Karen. Karen is making that awkward. So basically, Andy is just like, my best friend is mad at me, and basically it's your fault, because Fatima is like, I would never be that type of person. That's not who I am. And Andy agrees, because she knows that Fatima is not this type of person that they are trying to paint her out to be. So now moving forward, Fatima, she feels bad because she just met this group of ladies and she doesn't want them to get the wrong impression of her. And I'm like, girl, these heifers ain't nothing to impress. Andy ain't nothing to impress. Danny ain't nothing to impress. Karen ain't nothing to impress. And Sabrina damn sure ain't nothing to impress. So girl, you good. And like, it threw me off the fact that Fatima is like, well, should I call Karen? And I'm like, why are you trying to call Karen? You don't need to apologize for anything. Karen is the one who needs to apologize, because she's the one who slept with her ex, first of all, and she knew that he was talking to somebody. Secondly, Karen needs to apologize because she came at you sideways when y'all was in that grocery store. But let's go ahead and move along, because now Andy wants to know, do you actually like Zach? And Fatima says yes. And of course, you have Andy, who is shocked by this, because the version of Zach that she knows is not the version of Zach that Fatima knows. So basically, you have Andy like, I don't see what you see in this man. And you have Fatima who's like, nah, like, he has a lot of potential. That's what I liked about him. And Andy is like, potential? She's like, well, yeah, because he probably grew up with his mom telling him he wasn't good enough, and then you date somebody who's just like your mom, and you still, you're basically dating your mom. Like, you have someone who's not actually believing in you. And Zach has said to Fatima on multiple occasions how Karen, she was not good at encouraging him and letting him know, like, Zach, you can do this, or whatever it is that he was trying to do. She kind of belittled him every time that she could. So you have someone who's like Fatima, who's encouraging him, letting him know, like, no, Zach, you can do this, you can do that. And of course he's gonna like this person. And you have Andy who's like, that makes a lot of sense. And then Fatima's like, what makes sense? And she's like, what, I'm not going to get into, their relationship. And I'm just like, well, girl, you should have just kept that whole little, that makes sense to yourself. So you also have Fatima saying, well, you can go ahead and let Karen know that, it's over between me and Zach. And Andy's questioning, like, is it really? And she's like, yeah, it's over. So she's like, well, I'll let her know. And I'm just like, really? You're going to go tell Karen hey girl, Fatima and Zach, they ain't together or whatever it was no more. And what was Karen gonna do? Be like, ooh, well, let me run back to Zach? I don't even understand what she could even do with that information, because honestly, it doesn't even matter if they're together or not if Zach is telling you that he doesn't want to be with you. Also, the fact that you have Andy saying that, oh, well, I'm going to go to the salon and I'm going to tell Karen tonight that you guys aren't together. I'm just kind of like, really, girl? You mean to tell me that you about to go rush over there to Karen and be like, hey, girl, I still want to be in your good graces. So, nothing's happening with Fatima and Zach. Girl, bye. And then, I'm sorry, but I really hate this scene. And you have Fatima who's over here trying to be so remorseful for what she did when she is not the one who did anything. All she did was date a man who she did not know dated someone who she's an acquaintance with. Because she ain't friends with Karen. She don't owe Karen anything. She really doesn't. And the fact that you have Andy trying to really kind of push her in the direction of you should feel bad for this, I don't understand, because girl, Karen is the one who slept with her ex even though she knew that he was dating somebody. Why is no one holding Karen accountable? Alright, so we go ahead and see this quick scene with Zach. He's dropping some lady off and she needs her laptop back. Who really cares? Because the way she was holding him up, it was holding up the scene. Let's go ahead and move on to Maurice, because as we already know, old boy tried to come in there and cash that check, right? And he has Calvin's checkbook. So instead of letting Calvin know that this is what's happening, I guess Maurice must have forgotten some type of way. So I'm assuming that he was looking into Calvin's bank account and come to find out, baby boy done emptied out Calvin's bank account. Y'all, please let me know how this man was able to withdraw all this money within a day. Because last time I checked, usually banks have limitations. They ask for ID when you're requesting certain amounts of money. Please make it make sense. That's all I'm gonna say. Just make it make sense. So now you have Jacoby looking over his shoulder trying to be nosy, and Maurice ends up shooing him away. So Maurice finally calls Calvin and is like, well, your checks are bouncing and your bank account is empty. And I'm just like, there's no way this man has emptied his bank account within a day. Also, Calvin, you don't have alerts on your phone that say when you're moving money around, or you've just, gave somebody $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Make it make sense. So now Calvin is pissed off because Maurice's friend is the one who had this dude up in his room, but I'm still giving a side eye to Calvin because I'm like, sir, you should have checked high and low for everything that you own, because you had two strangers in your stuff, in your room. You don't know what they could have taken. Come on now. So then Maurice is like, well, I tried to stop him, but, he's hit multiple banks and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you would be red flagged at some point if you are hitting multiple banks or whatever, because you can only take out so much. But, this is Tylerperry. So he's like, well, you need to come into the bank because a manager is the one who has to fix this. I'm like, yeah, that's not how Bank of America works when it comes to fraud. But I guess this type of credit union or whatever this is they have going on at this bank, this is how it works. So Maurice is trying to convince Calvin that he has to come into this bank, and basically Sabrina is the one who has to do it. And I'm just like, but she isn't, because Calvin is like, well, I can just go to another branch. And Maurice is like, no, you have to come into this one. I'm like, that's a lie, but okay, we're going to go with this storyline. Also, I was giving a side eye to the fact that Maurice is still worried about Calvin paying his portion of the rent. And I'm like, well, he wouldn't even be in this predicament if it wasn't for you allowing your friend to use your house however he pleases over the years. Alright, let's just go ahead and move on because the end of this episode was a waste of our time. So Gary ends up calling Danny and basically tells her, hey, Andy has this photo shoot. I would love it if you guys could come and support her. That's basically what the premise of the conversation was. So she calls her girl. She has to call Sabrina. She has to call Karen. And they basically all decide, oh yeah, we're going to pull up and see, what he's up to because Andy likes to take pictures. She probably won't be nervous. And that's pretty much that. That is where the episode wrapped up for me. This episode was very weak. It was very dry. We got nowhere in this episode because we're basically still at the top of the morning in this episode because nothing has happened besides all the ladies ended up going to work. And yeah, I need for like some days to go by. I really need for Tyler to start writing this show with days going by because, I'm kind of over this concept of we're going to spend 5 episodes in one day. Because this is why I keep saying I need to go back and watch the show from the beginning to realize and figure out how many days have actually passed. Because honestly, even though we're on season 3, we may be on day 20. Who knows? So let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.